Hi guys, it's Stephen Edwards from CTA. I was just making sure my mic was on. So this is the second video of the Xero Guy channel. I've had a request from someone in my network who wants me to look into customizing your nominal codes. So this is a little bit more advanced, I'd say, because the person who's requesting this is a bookkeeper. So just to give you a bit of an overview, background, if you are a business owner and you're not a bookkeeper, because you might be thinking what that is, nominal codes. So essentially when we're bookkeeping, we're accounting, we're putting something into different boxes, into different labels, different areas. So if you spend money on something, you're then trying to ring fence it, a bit like a spreadsheet with lots of different headings. What does that money relate to? Does it relate to travel? Does it relate to motor expenses? Does it relate to wages? Does it relate to VAT? And you've got all these different categories, and essentially that's called accounts. So when we say accounting, we're putting things to different accounts. Obviously it gets a lot more complex than that. And there's standard accounts. So I'm just going to show you what the standard accounts look like in Xero and most businesses. So if you go into Xero and go to accounting, and if you run a profit and loss account, there's different options. You can also run what's called a trial balance. You can also run a balance sheet, but I just want to keep it fairly simple initially, because a profit and loss is probably more important to most business owners and most people as a whole. So you can run a profit and loss, and what you're going to get here is you're going to get a summary of everything that's been accounted for, it's been entered into Xero, and it's been reconciled. If you don't know what those terms mean, we are going to do some more videos on some of the more basic stuff, but we're assuming you've already been doing some bookkeeping and you've got a kind of a summary, that's your profit and loss account. So saying, right, what money come in, what money went out. Just a little bit of background, the profit and loss is an accounting report, so it doesn't include every single thing that goes in and out. So money from loans, money paid out in dividends, those sort of things don't necessarily get shown in your profit and loss account. That's a bit more of a nuance, a bit of a, rather than diving into that now. So we've got these categories, and we've got some fairly typical categories for a bookkeeping system such as Xero. We've got advertising and marketing, we've got accountancy fees, we've got bank fees, we've got cleaning, we've got consulting, we've got entertainment. I'm not going into too much detail what these are all about, but these are quite typical. General expenses, also known as miscellaneous or sundry or other expenses. We've got light, power and heating, so that's generally to do with your office or your retail shop. If you have a home, just a side note, you wouldn't generally put that through the business, because you'd make a claim later on called use of home as office, or something along those lines, but that's something for another video, another day. But if you've got an office or you've got a retail shop, that's fine, or you've got a warehouse, a unit, those sort of things. Postage, freight, courier, sort of chucked into the same thing. Printing and stationery, rents, repairs and maintenance, salaries, subscriptions. So these are all fairly typical, and I'd say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe about 10 to 15. These are probably, for most people, the main categories. There are other categories. So what I want to share when we're talking about nominal codes, so Kieran, who I'm doing the video for, if you're watching this, I'm doing it for the channel as well. So what you actually need to do to change a nominal code. So when you set up your Xero, you're going to get some standard accounts. And if you want to see what the standard accounts already set up are by default, you need to go into accounting, chart of accounts here. And we can have a look behind the scenes to see what's available to us. So these are all the standard accounts or chart of accounts that have been set up for this business. So that when you set up Xero for the first time, you will get the default chart of accounts. It should look like this. However, if you are importing your bookkeeping system, so in this example, for Kieran, who I'm doing the video for, and his bookkeeper, if you're moving it from a different system, if you move it from Sage, you're going to have a historic chart of accounts. So it's a bit different, because there's two ways of getting the chart of accounts you want. One is to manually go in here, add different accounts, rename them, delete them and move them around, that sort of thing, which I'm going to go into a little bit of a background in a second. However, if you're coming from something like Sage or QuickBooks and you've already got customized chart of accounts, you don't really want to be doing that. It will get complicated. So if you are using a bookkeeping system already and you'll go into Xero, you would typically use something called Move My Books. So a lot of accountants use this to help them facilitate moving financial information from one system to the other. So Kieran, in your case, we can help with this, or your bookkeeper can set up an account and try and manage this. But essentially what Move My Books will do is help facilitate moving across all of the historic balances and the data to Xero. And what you will end up with is the same chart of accounts you started with in Sage, because all that customization, all that work and the sort of bespoke, making it suit your business, you won't lose that because it will come across to Xero. Move My Books by default can go up to 2 years, and then there's more of a cost to get the data going back further. So just a little bit of background in terms of doing that there's still some checks and balances if we were moving people's books across that we would probably do just to make sure we're happy with it. But if you've got a bookkeeper, someone's got their own bookkeeper, their own accountant, then obviously you can just check what was in Xero versus Sage and make sure you're happy with everything. So if you're coming from an existing system, use something like Move My Books. Okay. If you're starting from scratch and you want to amend your nominal codes, or you've moved it across, you still want to amend your nominal codes, this is where you go. You go to Accounting, Chart of Accounts, and you can amend what's already there. So you can go in, let's click Sales, and we can amend it. We can rename it. We can change the code. Generally, the codes are in roughly the right place, but the more important thing is, what is the code relating to? Is it an asset, fixed asset, overhead, expense, direct cost? So these are, the typical P&L, profit and loss accounts. You just need to get that right, but that's a bit more in-depth knowledge. I would usually recommend a bookkeeper or an accountant does these sort of changes, not a business owner, because you could put it in the wrong place. It just gets a little bit messy. So that's it. You can amend it, and you can also add a new one. So we're just going to give an example now. So let's just check. So this example is fairly typical because this demo company has only got one revenue account called Sales. Revenue 200, Sales. So what we're going to do is we are going to do revenue, and then we're going to do 201, and we're going to call it Sales Services. I'm just making this up, by the way. Sales Services. You can do all the VAT and everything. I won't go into too much detail about that at the moment. Don't really want to confuse things. And now we've got two sales categories, and we could even rename the first one, and we'll call it Sales Products. Let's pretend we've got products and services, but you could have product A, product B, product C, service A, service C, exam B, C, D, etc. So in our business, we would separate accounting services, bookkeeping, payroll, profit first, recharges for software such as Xero, tax insurance. We've got quite a lot of different revenue categories. We've probably got about 15. A bit extreme, but being an accountant, we're probably comfortable with what we're doing. For most businesses, you get away with maybe 1 to 5. Most businesses would maybe have 2 or 3 main sources of income, but you don't have to split your income. It just means when you then run a report, so we've added various sales categories, so when you now run a report, if we go back to the profit and loss, we've got the ability to get a bit more granular and see a little bit more detail in here. So at the moment it just says sales products, so let's pretend that there were, some of it was services. So we'll go back into the and if you're wondering what I did there, I just literally clicked in, and it will dive into the detail of the number, which is one of the beauties with online bookkeeping software. Back in the day, that was not possible with some systems, believe it or not. So we can go into the 30 odd K, and we can pick something here. Let's find something a bit chunky, £5,000, and we can edit how that was classified at the beginning. So let's now change that one to 201. Change it to services, click save, and if we run our P&L again, we've got a breakdown, and that's a lot more useful for us as business owners to get that breakdown. And then you can obviously do the same and sort of separate this. You could do 201, 202, etc., or some people do 200-1, 200-2. So that does work if you want to split your nominal code as well. So hopefully that's useful. Give me a shout, guys, if you've got any questions. Thanks.